working. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Metaphysical Insights. I'm your host, William Becker, and I'm very pleased today to have as my guest the wonderful Karen Frazier. Karen is a person of a vast variety of talents, as well as being a wonderful human being. But she's an editor, a prolific writer, a published prolific writer yet, um, a teacher, a student, a healer, musician. Um, the list goes on, and an explorer, and we'll get into some of it. Karen, welcome.
Thank you. I feel like I should be saying "aw shucks" as you're talking about me.
No, not at all. It's all true. You know, every time I see you or talk to you or something, the list is expanding, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I like to do stuff. What can I say? I like to learn stuff. I
Hmm.
like to share what I've learned.
Hmm.
And, my ultimate goal is just to find one person who maybe gets something from what I'm teaching or writing. And if there's that one person who does, then that's who I wrote that book for, or that's who I taught that class for.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that you do reach many people often. And hopefully, we're going to have one person. I had a class last Sunday, and one of the students had a question about dreams. Karen's
Okay.
my go to for dreams, for crystals, for anything like that. So I told this person about the show and to type in the question. So
Okay,
hopefully
cool.
she'll get that in here today.
Cool.
Um, let's start, I guess, with your latest projects. I know you have a new book out and things that you're coming up with. And we're kind of going in reverse, and then we'll talk some
Sure.
about some of these places that you have a connection with and taking self-care and all the rest of it too.
Okay, cool. So I do. I have a new book that came out this month. I think it was on the 3rd. It's called Angel Numbers for Beginners. I had to look at the title before I talked to you, so I would call it because I am notoriously in interviews, people will ask me what's the name of your new book, and I'll be like, So this time I made sure I looked. It's called
Uh-huh.
Angel Numbers for Beginners, and it is a part journal
Okay.
and part way method for decoding them. And what I've done is I've really tried to break it down so that anybody can decode any angel numbers they see without having to look it up. Because, a lot of times it happens when you're driving down the road or something like that. And if you have this decoding key in your mind, it's much easier. The book also talks about how to recognize them, what they are, what they aren't, places they might be, and how to personalize the meanings in your own life, and also what to do about it. So the journal part, which is the second half of the book, is essentially allowing people to do that decoding and recognize and see patterns of communication as they arise in their lives.
Okay. Now, for the people who don't know about angel numbers, and I'm not well versed on this, can you give us, without giving away the whole book, can you give us more of an idea of what they are?
Sure. So angel numbers is just a name. And I used the term angel numbers because it's what people call them and it's what
Okay.
they know them. The most common one people know is 1111. So what
Okay.
angel numbers are basically they're messages from source, the universe, your higher self, whatever you choose to call it, your spirit guides, right? There's no religion behind them. So angel can be for some people a triggering thing because it's a religious term.
Okay.
And so the word angel numbers is used simply because that's what people recognize them as. But really, what they are numbers from their guidance. They're
Okay.
they're either guidance or kind of a spiritual attaboy, right? One
Okay.
or the other. And they're repeating patterns of numbers. Often you'll see, like, for me, when I really first started recognizing angel numbers in my own life, I would always wake up at 3:33 in the morning. 3:33 every morning. And that was right before I started channeling the George Collective.
Okay.
And then I always knew that I had a George Collective message because I would wake up at 3:33 in the morning and I would get up and go to my computer and sit down and start to type. Never knew
Fascinating.
what I was going to type, would sit down and start to type.
Right.
So the angel numbers can show up in all sorts of things. They can be like invoice numbers, they can be bills, they can be license plates. And they don't have to be like 1111, 111, 222, things like that. They can also be a repeating sequence of numbers that you see regularly, like 123, 123.
Okay.
Uh, things like that. So, one example of an angel number that I'll share with you is that our very good friend Rob died on 2/22/22. I don't think that
Okay.
that was a coincidence.
I think you're right. I hadn't
Yep.
thought about that.
Yep. I
Yeah.
think that his spirit chose that time.
Every time he's mentioned, he shows up.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah. I
standing
hear from
right
him
in
a
front
lot
of me
too.
now. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
standing in the living room right now, grinning at me.
Because I'm
Uh-huh.
talking about him. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's great. It's always nice to connect with him somehow or another. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, and that doesn't, so I want to be very clear. An angel number doesn't mean you're going to die. That's just was something that, to me, that there was no coincidence, and that there was a message from Rob's higher self in that,
Right.
both to Rob and probably to the people who chose to see that.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense to me. And then it makes me wonder too, because 1111 is the first one you quoted.
Mhm.
And 1111, its big deal is that's 1111 at 11 o'clock was when the armistice for World War I was signed.
Yeah.
And so when people see that, is that a symbol of bringing peace? Is it
It's a symbol of, so one, the number one, so angel numbers basically break down into their numerology.
okay?
So even though they're repeating patterns to get your attention, essentially the numerology of them is what is important. So
Okay.
you would go to the single number, which is one, or if you added 11 11 1 2, a 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, it would be 4.
Okay.
I typically interpret it as one, and one is a beginning, it's something new, it's the start of a creative process.
Which frankly fits that because
Yeah.
out of that, the League of Nations was born.
Mhm.
These were some failed attempts at things, but it was a process that
Mhm.
um, had its flaws, but also had some good attempt in it. So,
Yeah.
okay.
And also 11 is something in numerology called a master number. Numerology typically does single digits 0 through 9.
Hmm.
But then certain 11, 22, and 33 are considered master numbers. And basically, it's just more of a more powerful, hey, this is the start of a, this is a creative process. And so the 1111 is the one that a lot of people see. It's the one that gets the most attention. I even saw like a really cute video that somebody posted maybe a year ago, where a guy was dressed in a blonde wig and he was doing his girlfriend, and he was doing his spiritual girlfriend. So, oh, it's time to meditate and all of this stuff. And he said, oh, it's 1111, make a wish. And I have done and said that. So,
Okay, I believe you. I
yeah,
believe you.
yeah.
Um, yeah, Karen is really good about popping out little surprises like this that are quite lovely. Um, um,
Try not to take myself too terribly seriously.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
yeah, and that helps make you approachable. Um, the other one of the things too I want to say though about your books. Now this new one I haven't gotten a copy of. I haven't read it yet. I haven't looked at it yet. Sounds like it would be one I should have.
Well, I
Karen's,
know normally I go to the William Becker well to try to get you to do a thing on it.
uh-huh.
And I was giving you a break this time.
Well, I'm always happy to. But I also understand it's, you know, you probably need other people on there too. Um, but Karen's books are always very informative, but they're not patronizing. They don't talk down to people, but they're approachable.
They're meant to be empowering.
Yeah,
My goal is always to give people a skill set rather than tell them what something means. That way
right,
they can make their own choices and decisions, informed decisions for their own energetic well-being without putting my interpretation on top of it.
right. Well, it's I mean, I believe it sounds like very similar to what I do with classes in that I tell students I can't, there isn't a one size fits all. My job isn't to tell you how to do it. My job is to help you access your own manual on how to do it and
Yeah.
what it means. And so it sounds like it's something similar where the individual has to do the work. I mean,
Well, yeah. I mean, well, look, any practice requires you to do the work, right? That's
yep.
why it's called a practice.
Hmm.
So, and any practice does that, whether it's doing psychic work
Hmm.
or whether it's engaging with universal guidance through things like angel numbers or in energy healing, things like working with crystals or Reiki. All of those things, they're not passive, they are active things where you must engage energetically in order to grow and expand from that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And Karen's got in mind that's always interested in learning more about more things, and it's very varied. Because I also know you love music, you love history. Um, there's so many different aspects that come through, and your books are on a variety of subjects.
I'm
You've got
curious.
histories, yeah,
Yeah, I got that from my dad. My dad was a very curious person, and I just have a very strong sense of curiosity. I'm a lifelong learner.
yeah.
I know that I'm never going to know everything, but dang, I'm going to try.
There's no reason not to learn as much as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's part of becoming our full, true self, coming into the full being we're our souls are created to be.
I think so. And I mean, even with me, that's the whole thing behind the travel too, right? And of
Right.
course, the other thing is I am a Sagittarius, and Sagittarians tend to be very enthusiastic, curious kind of people, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of mine is that karmic imprint that I have from when I was born and the tools that I gave myself and the challenges that I gave myself by coming into this person, this lifetime at this time. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And that's a good reminder. I'm glad you mentioned the tools that you gave yourself by coming in, because that's so much of what we do.
Mhm.
We make our own choices before we enter this life.
We do. And I mean, but that doesn't mean that you're stuck with those tools. That
Right.
means that that's your starting point, and those are the challenges and gifts that you have. And
Exactly.
then you gain more gifts as you work with through the challenges, and you meet more challenges, you make decisions in your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's I put that out there because just because so often people forget that we do have a responsibility in some way to take control and shape our own lives, and
Sure.
we have a responsibility in some ways, no matter how good or bad the situation was. We made a choice to be part of that at one point, to jump into it. I'm
Right.
talking
And it
about the
often feels
beginning of
unfair
life.
anyway.
Oh yes, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
it shouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm meaning that in a way of
Yeah.
saying, okay, great. We get that then, and we can go beyond blame and into learning and process and growth and development and working through the issues, working through whatever it is
Yeah.
that we chose, and you
Yeah,
can
I call
see
those
that.
things personology. Things like numerology, which is what
Mhm.
angel numbers are based on, and your numerology is based on the name at birth and your date of birth and things like that.
Right.
Um, I'm a 9 life path, which doesn't surprise me. And your horoscope, and those are the imprints. Those are actually your karmic imprints. When you're born, those are the things that your soul, not you, little baby, you
Right.
had no clue. But your
Right.
soul actually had said, okay, I want to work with this set of challenges. And, I want
Exactly.
to work with Pisces in my midheaven and, all of these things. Those are the choices that you make before you come here, so that
Hmm.
then, and that's what I think karma is. I don't think karma is the karma's a bitch variety of,
No.
payback. I think it's the imprint that we give ourselves that allows us to have certain strengths and
Mhm.
certain challenges and certain things that come into our life and just certain circumstances.
Right. And I think it's the onward process of our soul
Yeah, I do too.
over a period of lives
Yep.
that grow. And I don't know it's about you, but I look at it often linear because that's how we see time, and it makes sense to us because I mean, even the terms past lives and the
Yeah.
rest, but the reality is it's probably more happening all at
Oh
once in
yeah, it's all happening
different
right
ways.
now, baby.
Yeah. Hmm.
It sure is.
I love it.
Yep.
Um,
But
yeah.
I mean, with that in mind, while we have a linear experience, because that is what our conditioning is, and that is
Hmm.
the way that we move through life and understand and organize our thoughts and things,
Hmm.
um, because things are not linear and because everything is all happening right now, you can go back and heal your past self because really all you're doing is healing yourself now. And you can go back and find the roots of energetic roots of things that have rooted in your life now. And you can
Yes.
work on those in the past and have them resolve now
Hmm.
because it's not linear. We just think it's linear. And that's a really difficult concept for people to get. That's hard to wrap your mind around because you watch your clock and, like we met at 2 o'clock today, right?
Right. Yes.
And, I had to get out of bed and brush my teeth and go through my day and do my things before it was 2 o'clock for us to meet. So to me, it felt linear.
Exactly.
But we were having this conversation when I was getting out of bed and brushing my teeth. And, when I was flying home from Sedona last month too, all of those things, they're all
Right.
happening at once.
Yeah. I agree. And I first time I heard about that concept was, I think it was some of the Jane Roberts Oversoul 7 books
Hmm.
when in the early 80s. I had a
Hmm.
friend that had a bunch of them. I learned not to read one of them in the sauna because it fell apart. Um, but oh well,
That is a life lesson right there.
it is because I felt horrible. I bought her another copy. But um, the and this all fits together. And you know the way my mind works, it jumps around and
Sure.
circles around, and there's a melting pot in there. There's a mixer. But along with those things, you've been working on a project of self care. You have, I can't count how many times you've been to Sedona in the last year. And
Four,
okay,
three, a few.
yeah,
Yeah.
um,
Four. Final answer.
okay, sounds good. And Shasta area is another place you have an affinity for.
Hmm.
And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. What is it about those places? What are you connecting to? And how does that work with self care and your own regeneration and revitalization?
Sure. So the first time I ever went to Sedona was several years ago. Maybe 10, nah, not even 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Maybe like 7 or 8 years ago now. And I had at the time a mass blood loss event, and I was incredibly weak.
Right,
But we had tickets to Las Vegas, and while I should have been in the hospital getting a transfusion, I was instead trying to get onto a plane to get to Las Vegas because it was a Costco package and it was uncancelable and all of that stuff.
right,
So we flew to Las Vegas. I had to actually pre-board the plane. I had to be wheelchaired through the airport because I was so weak from all of this. So we got to Las Vegas, and I had never been before, and I hated it. I hated everything about it. The energy of Las Vegas was very difficult for me. I'm empathic.
right.
And there's a lot of desperate energy there that was really difficult, especially in my weakened condition. And
Mhm.
so we had a rental car, and Jim said, "You know what? I'm just gonna drive you places. You can see the world from the car." And I said, "Great." And so he had two places. He wanted to drive me to Bryce Canyon, and he wanted to drive me to Sedona. And
Mhm.
he knew I was in pretty bad shape. So he said, "I'm going to drive you to Sedona today." And I was like, "Cool." And I just kind of laid back in the car and sort of looked at things as we went along. And I'm feeling very, very weak still, just like, walking to the car took us forever because we were staying at the Venetian, and those casinos in Las Vegas are huge, and you have to walk like a couple miles almost to get to your car, even when you're parked in the casino thing. So anyway, we pull into Sedona's, where we drove in through Oak Creek Canyon, which is beautiful. It has these these rock spires that are called hoodoos, which immediately, like, they had just this energy. There's this energy to them. And I was really excited about that. And then we came around, and bam, here's Sedona, which is this beautiful, vibrant red rock with everything beautiful. And the energy felt so great. Yeah, Katie, I get it. I've actually been there a couple times, but it's always been passing through. Hate it so much. But so there's all of this beautiful red rock. It was this beautiful sunny day, and it was very crowded because Sedona is very crowded. I have times that we go where it's not crowded, but I'm not going to tell you that. So, because I don't want people to go,
right?
Because I don't want it to get crowded. But so it was the day we were there, because this was in October, which is one of Sedona's busiest months. So incredibly crowded. And all of the vortex things were hikes, and they were also all just packed with parking and everything. So Jim said, well, I'm just going to take you up to see the Chapel of the Holy Cross. He said, because you can just drive right by the base of it. And so he drove by the base of it. And as we were driving into this place, and it's considered a minor vortex, not one of their major vortexes. There are like 7 vortexes, major and minor, or there's more than that. I think the whole area is a vortex, frankly. And so, but as we were driving by this, just under the bottom, I started to feel better. I started to feel a little bit energetic. Well, you have to drive up this big kind of switchbacky hill to get up to the chapel itself, because it's up on a hill in the rocks. It's really pretty. And he said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just drop you at the base of the chapel. You just stand here. I'm going to drive down and park, and then I'll help you up the ramp. And he pulled out, and there was still a ramp to go up to the thing, probably about 200 yards, still good, uphill.
Right.
And I booked up that ramp.
Wow.
Booked up that ramp. Jim came up. He was like, oh my God, where is she? And I was up top. I was up there. And I felt better for the rest of the trip. That was the only thing we did in Sedona that day. We drove back to Las Vegas. We had like dinner reservations that night or something. So we drove back to Las Vegas after going to the Chapel of the Holy Cross, and I felt better. And I was okay for the whole trip, where I was able to stand out and watch the fountains at the Bellagio, and I was able to walk around at Bryce Canyon, and all of these things that I 2 days before could not have done. And so I was hooked. And the other thing is, just as I was in Sedona, what I described it at the time as is it felt like the mothership had called me home. And so, look, I'm a very woo person. Sedona is a very woo place. There's this incredible energy there. There's this very vibrant energy there. And it hits all of the things I like. It's outdoorsy. So there's a lot of hiking, and I love to hike, and I love to walk around and see beautiful things. And Sedona is one of the most beautiful places on the planet, in my opinion. And also, it's like super artsy fartsy, and I'm super artsy fartsy. So, and it's got really good food, wine, and dining.
Okay.
And cocktails. Cocktail game is strong. And so these are all so all of those things draw me back. But when I'm there, I always feel incredible. And so I go and I bask in the energy, and I do a lot of hiking, and I climb up on rocks, and I do a lot of sitting and meditating and just sort of breathing. And Mount Shasta was a few years later, and we were just on a trip, and Jim was like, I was reading that Mount Shasta is kind of a little Sedona. It's also vortex. I believe it's considered either the root or the crown chakra of the planet. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
But it also has a lot of extraterrestrial activity there in the mountains.
Right.
And so, again, it's just a thing where I went, and the air was beautiful and the outdoorsy was beautiful, and this little tiny town, in a town that has maybe 20 shops total, 8 of them were crystal shops, so it was it just, for me, it's a place where I go and I feel renewed. And no matter what's going on in my life and no matter how crappy I feel, I go there and I feel great. But these aren't the only two places. I mean,
Right.
I believe all of our national parks, or most of our national parks in this country, actually have that vortexy energy as well. I know I felt it at Lassen, in Northern California.
Hmm.
I have definitely felt it at Bryce Canyon, Grand Canyon, Zion, Arches
Right.
National Park, and I think it has to do with the rock formations and that you're out in nature. And I've even felt it at like Sequoia and the redwoods and all of those things. I believe it's just nature. It's being in nature, and the planet is there and nurturing and supportive, and people are in a good mood because they're not in the city fighting people, and you know. And
Yeah.
so I think that it's a combination of things. Um,
Right.
but I think all of those places, I think that if people could, even if you could just go out in your backyard and touch a tree every day, I just think there's something there. Yeah, like yesterday afternoon, I went out. It was sunny. It's
Hmm.
snowing now, but it was sunny yesterday. And I went out and I sat out on my front porch with my hummingbirds, and I watched the other birds at our little bird feeder, and I watched the squirrels running up the trees, and I
Uh-huh.
just felt better.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm. Sitting out on a park bench overlooking the falls um, can be a wonderful thing. I notice, and part of it I think is the rushing water.
Yeah.
Even
Oh,
though
for
I'm
sure.
even though I'm a little ways away from it, the ocean is one of those places for me.
Yeah, absolutely, for me as well. I mean, and I've been all up and down, the west coast of the U.S., and then I've been
And
on
so have I.
the Atlantic Ocean, and
Hmm.
they're both fabulous.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
very different.
very different. So Virginia Beach, I was in Virginia Beach in November.
Hmm.
I was at the Edgar Casey Center teaching,
Hmm.
and teaching a class on remote viewing at a psychic conference.
Excellent.
And yeah, it was fun. And just I was there by myself, and it was kind of a fly in, fly out thing, right? I got there on Thursday, I left on Sunday. So it was
Right.
really quick. But I went and I sat on that beach by myself, and it was November, so it wasn't super crowded, but it was still 70 degrees, and it was just lovely. It
Yeah.
was just, again, I should have been exhausted because I'd been flying and just doing all of these things. I've been so busy, and I wasn't. I just felt good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you'd spend hours in a crowded plane packed with people at airports. So you've got all that other energy, which as an empath always takes a little work to at least tone down if you
Yeah,
can.
I have kind of paved my way in airports so that they're a little easier for me. I have
Okay.
the clear where you get your eyes scanned or your fingerprints,
Uh-huh.
and I have TSA pre-screen. So when you go through clear, they take you to the front of the TSA pre-screen line. So I kind of have worked it out so that I can kind of get through the airport like a hot knife through butter, which is really a nice perk. Let me tell you, it's worth every
Yeah.
penny that I spent on that, because
Yeah.
given how much I've been traveling.
Yeah. I've been wanting to, because I've gotten the TSA pre-check just by chance sometimes. But
Oh, it's the best.
the last time I went overseas and I was looking at all of these different options in the international one and such, and um, the waiting list for the interviews and such was so long. Um, I
Yeah.
was going to be back for 6 months before I could have gotten the appointment.
Oh,
And so maybe before the next trip. But
worth the time and effort, worth every penny. I know that
mhm.
people didn't tune in to hear this. They want to hear us talk about spiritual stuff, but no, do TSA. See, that's another thing. That's a secret I probably shouldn't be sharing either, because the more people that do it, the harder it gets for me.
Oh, I know what you mean, but it makes such a difference. And even with the airline tickets you get certain perks about some of this if you just book a little higher level than coach.
I do.
You don't need. business class or first class. I mean,
Oh, do you
uh,
just do you do the
the
premium
coach
class?
class or premium or something like that
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
help you get in front of some of these lines.
Yep.
And that's part of why I was angry after my last trip with the airline who up everything and put me on flights that didn't have it, even though I paid for it. And anyway, I got stuck. Eh, that's not what we're talking about. Um,
That's a whole nother podcast, the travel nightmares. I've had a few.
yep.
This year
And
has been pretty good for me, except for I did get stuck. I was going to um, Tennessee in April, and I was layover at Dallas Fort Worth. Oh, the worst airport in the United States, I think. It's so
worse than
loud.
Newark.
It's just really loud and
Okay.
really crowded, and it was really hot. Um,
Oh,
and I got stuck there. My plane was delayed and delayed and delayed, and I wound up there for like 10 hours
ooh.
just trying to get to Knoxville. So anyway, that's enough
Okay.
travel.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um, could you explain a little bit more for our viewers too, just what your understanding of a vortex is?
A vortex is a space of energetic resonance. Um, and there are good vortexes. Okay, I don't want to use good and bad. That sounds judgmental. There are
Right.
vortexes that raise, and there are vortexes that lower vibration. Um, but so a vortex is simply an energetic place. You might notice better connection in meditations. Some people have had the physical healing stuff.
Hmm.
You might just feel better. You might feel whooshes of energy, or it just may feel like any old place to you. It kind of depends on how tuned in you are to it.
Hmm.
But that's essentially what it is. I have a theory about at least one kind of vortex, the kind of vortex in the national parks and in Sedona and places like that. What I've noticed is the places where I've experienced this, oh, Crater Lake is another one,
Right.
um, is that there's a round rock formation. So and the energy has a chance to spire in this. So there's rocks all around, which makes sense, right, with the canyons, and even in
Right.
Sedona and places like that. But the when it started to occur to me was at Lassen, the National Volcanic Park. We were driving through the caldera, which is basically a circle of rock, right?
Exactly.
And I felt it there, and that's when I really and so I started to test it. There's a place up in Nanaimo, British Columbia, on Vancouver Island
Hmm.
that Jim and I went to back in 2020, in like February of 2020, before the world shut down.
Right.
And Jim has heart issues, as you know,
Hmm.
and he had been having some chest pain issues, and so we knew he was pretty close to needing another stent or another angiogram surgery.
Hmm.
But so we were up there again. It was a thing where we had already paid for everything. So we went to this place in Nanaimo. It's called Petroglyph Park. And Jim was, I mean, the whole trip he was walking slowly. He was like, we had to stop and rest a lot, that type of thing. And we got to this Petroglyph Park, and up the hill, he did the same thing there that I did. And he literally ran up the hill. I watched him. I was like, dude, careful.
Yeah.
But it has a lot of, it's a sacred indigenous site,
Okay.
First Nation,
Hmm.
and it has petroglyphs, which is why it's called Petroglyph Park. But they're in these carved into this sort of basin of rocks.
Okay.
So,
Fantastic.
and then I also think mountains, and I think oceans, that circular motion with the pulling and of the
Hmm.
waves and the tidal motions, I think. And also there's positive ions that are in the air from the salt. And I mean,
Right.
so there are probably other reasons, but those are some of the ones I've noticed. I find Hawaii feels very highly spiritual. There are places that feel highly spiritual that may not be vortexy, but they're still super healing, that have been sacred sites for indigenous people. There's all sorts of stuff like that.
Right. And if you look on, overseas in Europe, um, Britain, Middle Eastern areas, Near Eastern areas, so many sites too that have been known for healing, and they usually involve water.
Yeah.
Um, and they've been healing sites for literally thousands of years,
Yeah.
and river sites. I think it makes sense. Plus, with water, fresh water, a lot of these places were that's that gives life.
Yeah, when we go to every time we go to Mount Shasta, we always go to the headwaters of the Sacramento River,
Mm,
where the water has filtered down for 7 years through the mountains, and you get it right at the source as it's coming out of the mountains. And I always bring some home. I always drink it. It's very healing water.
yeah,
Plus,
that
it
makes sense.
tastes really good, right? Because it's this really pure.
Right.
Hmm.
And you don't have to worry about everything that's been added
Yeah,
downstream.
there's no fluoride in it. There's no any of that. And people in the city of Mount Shasta actually will take big jugs. They get their water there, some of them.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
How far is that from the town?
It's actually in the city park.
Okay.
So it's
Because
the city of Mount Shasta. It's the Mount Shasta City Park.
I need to stop there and spend some time there. I always drive through,
Oh,
just
you
on the
shouldn't
freeway
drive
drive,
through. I
and it's
know.
beautiful, but I'm on the way down to wherever it is I'm going or on the way back, and
No,
I
I
need
know.
to
We did
include
that
a
for a
few
long
extra.
time too until Jim was like, we're going to stop here. And I was like, city of Mount Shasta. That sounds, no, it's awesome.
Yeah, and now having talked to you, they should hire you as their goodwill ambassador, I think. Um,
Well, I mean, look, 8 crystal shops in a little tiny town. That's enough to get people there in my book.
Yeah. Now, how did you get involved with crystals to begin with? Because you've written several books on them. You've got so much um, knowledge and background with them, and you've turned several people into addicts. Um,
No, they did that
I
themselves. You can't make someone be an addict.
no, that's true. You're absolutely right. And I'm going to change that word from addict to avid collector.
Yes. Broke people who have lots of crystals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I have loved rocks since I was a kid. I had a rock collection. It was in my parents' basement.
Hmm.
Um, and we kept it in a cardboard box. Every time even from the time I was very little, I have memories. I grew up on the West Coast. I grew up near the water up in Bellingham, Washington. Um, and so a lot of bay, little rocky beach bay stuff up there. And I would always be digging through the rocks on riverbanks at the bay, anywhere on beaches looking for agates and things. And I would always pick up rocks I loved. And so
Hmm.
I just loved them from the time I was a kid. And then, of course, I grew up and went away to college and things. And my parents sold the house and got rid of my rocks, which was fine. And then when I was 30, 2 to 33, somewhere in there, because my son, who's 20, almost 27 now, he was very little at the time. I was going through some stuff, and I had a sore throat that had persisted for a couple of months. It was not like your garden variety sore throat. It was a very, very severe sore throat, and it wouldn't go away. And the medical doctor was like, I don't know, I just, I didn't have strep. I didn't have any of that stuff, but I had this really persistent sore throat. So finally, I found a medical doctor who was also an alternative practitioner. And so my goal was that I was going to get this medical doctor to give me herbs, and I was going to get my insurance to pay for it. That was my plan. I was jobbing the insurance. And so I went, and I had Tanner in tow because his dad was at work. And he just kind of sat quietly in the corner and played. And I laid down at a table, and she put crystal on my throat. And she talked to me and found out, about the sore throat and all of that stuff. And she laid me on a table. She put the crystal on my throat. She did a couple other things. And then she stood there and she basically held my head. I understand now what she was doing was craniosacral therapy. At the time, I was like, what are you doing? Or it was Reiki, excuse me. She was doing Reiki. And at the time, I was like, how is you standing there? How is a rock on my throat and you standing there holding my head going to do anything? And she just, and I was asking her question after question like that. And she was very sweet about it, but she basically very gently said, shut up and listen, just
Right.
shut up and experience it, just be in this space, you
Right.
know. And so I did, and I felt something inside me, like a whoosh, and I started to cry. And it wasn't my pretty cry with the one tear
Hmm.
sweetly rolling down my cheek. It was the ugly cry, the snot and the tears. Couldn't talk. And I cried on and off for 3 days. And when
Wow.
after that 3 days, my sore throat was gone and didn't come back. And so that started me looking around and everything else. But at the time, I was still in this space of this is not, I was raised in the church. I'm a very logical person. I
Right.
believe in science,
Yeah.
and all of those things that we tell ourselves. And so I wasn't going to give into that. I thought, well, that's a coincidence. It was just ready to be done. The crying stuff was weird. And I had gone back and talked to her. So I knew what she'd done was the Reiki, and she'd done the
Hmm.
crystal and all of that stuff. So she had explained that to me. I was like, okay.
Right.
But then maybe about 3 years later, I had a dream, and I just found the dream journal that this was in the other day. So I had a dream, and I wrote it about it, and I forgot about it until I found this dream journal recently. But the dream was of me being in this room clearing out full of crystals and picking up crystals and being so excited that all of these crystals were going to be mine. And so forward many years later, as I was really starting to step into my own and recognize that my skepticism wasn't doing me any good. In fact, it was doing me harm.
Right.
And that my skepticism was based in what will other people think of me versus what my heart and spirit wanted to do.
Right.
And so I started studying everything I could. And I was studying lots of stuff. And at the time, I was writing cookbooks for my publisher. And they had a crystals book, and they said, "You want to write it?" And I said, "Boy, howdy do I." And that was it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have an impressive collection both of crystal books that you've written and crystals.
I have a few crystals. Yeah.
And you have a lot of people that don't think you're weird.
I don't really care if people think I'm weird anymore. This is who I
Yeah.
am. This is the authentic me. I never want to minimize anyone else's experience.
Right.
And so I'm careful when I say this, but you and I are friends.
Hmm.
And so for me, stepping into my power as a healer, psychic, and all of those things was very much like coming out of the closet as
Yep.
a being of something that was very different than what people thought I should be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know what you mean on both of those,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
because yeah, and
I only
um,
know on the one, but I
right,
mean, this is genuinely, I understand that pressure to be what you aren't.
exactly,
And you just have to be who you are. And I
yeah,
still struggle with that sometimes. Because my family doesn't believe in what I do. Not my family, like my husband and my kids, they're fine.
oh
But
yeah,
my sisters and my parents, and we don't talk about what Karen does,
hmm,
which is fine.
hmm,
But so, but what I've just come to this place is this is who I am.
right,
And I know that for me, with my sisters and my mother and my children, and Jim, I want them to be happy and lead their authentic lives as an expression of their authentic selves, whatever that looks like, right?
right, hmm,
And I encourage that, I support that, and I've got to imagine that even though my family doesn't understand that they must want that for me because that's what I want for them. And
yeah,
even if they don't want that for me, that's what I'm going to do anyway.
right.
Yeah.
I like your attitude, and I agree. And the more we accept and allow ourselves to be, the more we are able to allow others to be as well,
Yeah,
and wish them to be their authentic self. And
absolutely.
you know, I one of the things I like about having earned all this silver on my head,
Yeah,
uh,
I've earned some too.
yeah, is that it helps. We actually do get a little bit wiser, I think, at least on how to live our own lives.
I think that we
And
just become more at peace with ourselves and recognize
right,
that we just have to be who we are. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You mentioned the silver hair. I actually colored my hair
Hmm.
until 2020. And then I started getting the COVID grow out. And I actually just kind of thought, you know what? It's time. It's time to have my wisdom sparkles in my head. So,
Right.
yeah.
We're the elders of the tribe anymore, you know. At least in my family, my generation is.
My mom's still alive.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
true.
yeah.
Yeah. Um,
But we're getting
and
there. I mean, we're the old
mhm.
folk. I've got the young married kids now, so
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, who would have thought? Yeah, my
Tanner's
sister's
married,
kids.
Liz isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's just it feels good to let go and not have to be in
Mm.
control of everything.
Hmm. And I mean, and I worry about a lot of things much less. Like I used to really, like my weight, I would worry about that and think, well, what do people think of me? And even when I was first starting going out and speaking and doing engagements and all of that, I thought, are people going to disrespect me because I'm heavier? And again, look, I got something to share, and my weight has nothing to do with who I am.
No.
And my gray hair has something to do with who I am only because I've lived long enough to get it.
Exactly. And some of that's genetic and some of it's
Yeah.
life and
Yeah.
yeah. Um so I had more gray in my hair when I was much younger than you. Um
Well,
but I
yeah,
dyed it.
I have quite a lot. It's really showing pretty well on the screen
Uh,
right now as far as not look at it looks more highlighty. But no,
uh,
I've got a lot. I've got quite a bit of gray, but I there's no color in it. I don't color my hair anymore.
yeah.
I haven't in
It
two
look
and a half years.
yeah, and it looks great.
Thanks.
Um but that's one of the things cuz you and I have known each other for a long long time now.
Yeah.
Quite a while. And
2010.
yeah, and watching you grow into more being who you fully are and how that's changed you a little bit as and I'm not sure how to say that because you
You're
were
not
always
going
just
to insult me. I'm more open. I'm softer.
yes,
Yes.
yeah, and you've always been this great person, but you are your energy field around you has shifted a bit. um
Yeah, I think
you
so.
know,
I mean, but I've worked on that. I mean, that's
yeah,
been what I've prioritized for the last 20 years, probably almost.
yeah,
Oh,
uh-huh,
yeah.
yeah, and it's I'm just saying it's um it works for people, so it's an acknowledgement and an encouragement for others to do that. Find your telos, find your true inner kernel and who you are, and work with it. And it's hard to wade through all the rubbish out there as far as videos or books or quote documentaries or whatever or teachers,
Yes,
but find
ish.
some that resonate with you.
Yeah, any path to spirit is the right path to spirit, is my belief.
Uh-huh.
Because any path to spirit, and this is the secret. This is the secret of it all. It's really a path to yourself. What you are
Right,
seeking is you, because at your core, you are source energy. You are source. You are what you are seeking. And I could have probably saved myself a good 35, 40 years if I had have figured that out a long time ago.
right.
And sometimes I still forget it.
You're human. I'm shocked. Um,
Go
but
figure.
yeah, but I mean that's part of what I mean though, because I've taken a lot of detours. I've been working on the same path
Sure.
for more decades than I want to admit.
Sure.
But I've 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 worked with people that probably weren't the best ones to work with because I learned something. But that's one thing. I learned something from everybody, and
Yes.
sometimes it was learning. Okay, this doesn't feel right or work right for me. Sometimes it's like, yeah, that's not good. That's not right. Period. Um,
Yep. But
and right,
but then you have to trust yourself when you know and move on.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, finding a crystal. You just you don't just say, "Give me a bag of crystals." You see which ones resonate with you. And I
Yes.
understand the rocks because I did a lot of that too. And my parents were teachers all through junior high and high school. We were
Mine were
gone all
teachers. Mine
summer.
were teachers too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had an 8.5 foot camper, no air conditioning. And I know what all these places are like in June, July, and August because that's when we could go.
Yeah, a
And
little warm.
yeah, and we loved it anyway because it's
Yeah.
the only way we could go. And I in the national parks, you don't pick up rocks.
No.
And so I'd buy collections of samples of the minerals and the different things they'd have there. I'm sure I still have some of those someplace, as well as picking up things that were just interesting and pretty. And I'd go to the campfires at the national parks and learn about the geology and the geography. And, I was a nerdy kid. I can't help it. I
I was a
liked it.
nerd too. I still am.
Yeah. And um, it wasn't necessarily a good fit at school, but in the national parks, it was great.
Yeah.
And um, my sister and I were old enough, we could do a lot of this wandering on our own because it was close and. Um, but there's something about the created world that you can connect with. And when I was a kid, I didn't understand what that was, but you can feel it in
You just
spots.
knew you liked it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
when you're in those parks, because I'm not sure if I've been to Lassen, but and I haven't been to Sedona.
Lassen's
But
pretty cool.
yeah, I'd
Yeah.
like to go. If I haven't been, I just don't remember.
And it's not super crowded. I mean,
That's a
it's a
plus.
haul into Eastern California from
Hmm.
Shasta. So yeah.
Yeah. Um, but these places, they're revitalizing. And it wasn't just because I was a kid and had more energy to climb around and do things. My sister and I walked the trail all the way down Bryce Canyon and then back up again.
Oh,
Um, yeah, that was a trail. But, you know, I was,
I love those hoodoos in Bryce Canyon. They're amazing.
yeah,
They've got something. There's some energy in those that are pretty impressive.
part of what I did, because we drove through so much of the Red Rock country all around. We loved it.
Me too.
And Monument Valley stuff and all
Oh
that.
yeah, I love Monument Valley.
And I would start, you see these things and my imagination, I'd turn them into palaces because you're not even in a park and you've got these incredible formations
Yes.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I'd start turning them into palaces and living in them. It was
Oh,
quite
cool.
fun. Yeah,
Cool.
I didn't talk about that too much. But
Well, somebody sent me earlier this week. There's a survey, and they wanted me to comment on it for an article that they were doing. And just the survey was essentially saying that younger people, like under the age of 40, that there's just high levels of belief in things like crystals and herbs and things like that. And so they wanted me to comment on why I thought that was. But I mean, it was like over 50%
really,
have a belief in this. And it's to me, it's indicating that that this shift that we all think is happening is truly happening. And it's happening faster in the younger generations because they're being born with it. And in the
right,
older generations, we're having to kind of have one foot on either side of it. And,
right. And
yeah,
actually, I'm kind of surprised in a sense because I'm old enough. I wasn't quite old enough to be allowed to be active in the hippie generation.
yeah.
I turned 13 in the summer of 69, well, in the winter of 69. Um, but there was so many people my age that were into this the first time around. Well, not
Well,
the first time around, but
that
the
was
first
start of
time,
the shift in consciousness, right? I'm
right,
not
the age of
saying that
Aquarius,
older people, are don't believe in anything.
right,
And actually, Carolyn Meese talks about it, and she explains it quite well. That she says that when we entered the nuclear age, humanity really started, that's when consciousness started to shift. And the reason that she says that this is so, or she believes it is so, is that for the first time, man, who is very creative, had created something that could destroy us, and we couldn't do anything about that. And therefore,
Right.
we had to develop the consciousness to be able to do something, to develop our consciousness so that it then didn't destroy us.
I think that's a really smart,
Very astute,
interesting.
isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And hopefully we keep that up. Actually, I say that, and this sounds really harsh, and well, I don't mean it to be harsh, but most species go extinct eventually. And if ours does at some point, the part of the benefit of the work we do is we know that after this existence, there's another one that isn't punishment, it isn't painful, it's a rebirth and a rejuvenation
Sure.
and a chance to move on to the other things.
But
And
I
I'm not.
do think that this time, with this group of younger people who have this very different consciousness than we do,
Mhm.
I think that we do have the opportunity to not wipe ourselves out.
And I really do hope that's true.
Yeah.
I would like to see the shift happen. So, because I feel like we're really on the border, and
Oh,
sometimes
we're
it's a
right
little,
there. Yeah.
and it's not just with nuclear weapons, it's with the
Yeah.
planet, what we're
Yeah.
doing. And I'm not being political. I keep politics out of the show and everything else. It's just way the planet is going with
Sure.
warming and changing.
Environmentally.
Yep.
But remember what we talked about way back almost an hour ago, where all time happens now?
Yes,
We can heal that.
that's true. I hadn't thought about
So,
that.
how do you do that? You know how you do that? You work on shifting yourself, and you work on creating the strongest energy, the highest vibration you can for yourself, and
Mhm.
spreading that to others as well. And that's how we do it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I always learn a lot whenever we talk, be it sitting around having lunch or a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or on these. I always enjoy your company, but you always make me think. So
When you with the wine, is it that you learn that Karen can't handle her wine? I'm like, about a
I
half
haven't.
about a half a glass of wine is about all I can handle, and I'm like,
Well, I just figure Karen's having a good time. That's all.
whoop.
And there's often a group of people having kind of the same good time. So that's
Yes, yes, but my good time starts much earlier than everybody else's. What I'm telling you is that I cannot handle my alcohol even a little. So
uh, yeah. But you make great cocktails.
I make great cocktails. I don't drink a lot of them. I make and taste as I make them, and
Mhm.
then I like to make them just because I like to make other people happy.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And you're also a fabulous cook, chef, actually.
thank you.
You're welcome.
That's why I
I'm
used to write
wrangling.
cookbooks.
Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Oh, I love it too. I'm at a point where want somebody to clean up after me.
Well, I get it. I do most of my own cleaning.
Hmm.
Jim will clean up occasionally.
Okay. Good. Um, how do people get a hold of you? Because you give readings,
Yeah,
you
so I'm
teach.
on, that self-care thing we were talking about. I promised
Uh-huh.
myself in November that I was going to take 3 months off. Last year was a very busy year for me. I was starting
Right.
to feel a little burned out. And so I will be returning to that around February 15th. They can go to my website, authorkarenfrazier.com. The appointments thing will show up again on my website about a week before I am ready to start doing it. So, and I'm going
Great.
to have kind of very limited appointments.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I've worked with Karen. She's a real deal.
Oh,
Um, they can get your books on that site then too.
the books are available. At least the links to the Amazon are on my site. Absolutely. There's a lot of them. You can follow me on Instagram, author KFraz, KFRAZ. And I'm on Facebook as author Karen Frazier.
Okay. Fantastic. And I put the authorcareandfrazier.com up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Katie's a wonderful human being too. I think you know her.
I think I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, she connects well.
Cool.
So, yeah. Do you have anything else you want to put out there before we end the show?
You
We're
know,
at.
don't be afraid of what's coming in the world. I know it feels scary,
Mhm.
but you can affect it. And I think that talking about the nature of time was the perfect way to introduce it. And you can not only affect what's coming in the future, you can affect what's happened in the past. And if we all do this together, we can make things better.
That's perfect and that's beautiful. And I agree.
Cool.
Yes. Karen, I can't thank you enough. It's such a joy to see your face and have a conversation with you.
Yeah, I guess I'll see you in a couple months at the are you going
Or
to Oregon Ghost Conference?
I'm not sure yet.
Oh, I'll be
Um,
there.
okay. If I'm there, I'll see you. And, maybe some other time off of work, um, we can see what we can do.
Sounds
But
good.
yeah, perfect. Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate this. And we'll talk to you all soon. Bye bye.